And we're live.
Oh.
Good to be here.
All right, yeah.
Wow, what a conundrum. We just set it all up and we're here at the Firehouse Hostel where Derek lives, just chatting up a storm.
Yeah, I'm Derek Dimpfl. Hans Kim, what is your podcast called?
It doesn't really have a name. It's just more like doing it to do it. It's like practicing podcasting, but actually podcasting. So
Okay.
I don't think the name's that important. Maybe if I get famous, people will go back to this and listen to it.
Okay, but the idea right now is just to get accustomed to a studio conversation setting.
It's to talk to people that I want to talk to, and I'm currently doing it.
Okay.
So it's happening.
All right.
It's just pretty cool that you can just start doing it. Because back in the day, if you wanted to do a radio show, you'd have to go book a studio. But now you can just do it like this.
Right. Yeah. So do you publish it on Anchor?
No, just YouTube, Facebook.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. What's Anchor?
It's a podcast publishing platform which you can share it to Spotify, iTunes, etc. It's totally free. That's where I publish my podcast. It's audio only though, but Anchor does support video.
Does it cost money?
No, Anchor, yeah, it's Anchor.fm is totally free.
Well, it's now going to be on Anchor.fm. Check us out.
All right.
So what do you think about America?
Whoa, what do I think about America? All right, well, I'll try to leave behind it because there's so many layers to that question, right? So what I'm wanting to do right now is shuffle off my stereotypes and kind of get to the bottom level. Well, I'd say that coming from Massachusetts originally, I learned to have a very positive attitude towards America because Massachusetts Bay Colony outside of Jamestown, Virginia, was the first colony, in America, and so there's a lot of pride over that kind of thing. And like in one of the major holidays in my hometown, Concord, is Patriots Day, when we chased away the British, in the battles of Lexington and Concord and so forth.
Yeah.
So that was a really big part of my upbringing. I'd say that I'm positively disposed towards America.
Because of the history and where you grew up?
Well, I'd say that lays the foundation for my attitude towards America.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So because you were born here and you have a lot of connections to here, you like it?
Not just because of that, but I have a... All right, so what are you getting at with the question?
Like, do you like America because it's the land of your birth and you have loyalty to it and you know the history, you grew up around the history, but as opposed to like general, if you're an alien and you were observing each country, attributes and
that's
negatives.
Hard to say, like to view things from like an alien perspective, but the way that I'm disposed towards America is not purely a matter of loyalty. As a matter of fact, I think it's a lot less a matter of loyalty than it is, at least in my mind and my heart today. And you've caught me sort of on an off day. Like, I would say that it's more of like a positive emotional connection to it.
Yeah.
Because like those earliest years when I was living in Massachusetts were some of the like happier and happiest years of my life, and so when I think about, so it's like I think it's entangled with that.
Entangled, yeah. So it's a formative part of your growing up and your personage.
Yeah, but I mean, and of course I learned the history of. I was taught to think of America as exceptional as a result of its early history, and as a matter of fact, I really enjoy reading things like the founding documents just because I like how the language is structured.
Like the Bible, except a little bit newer.
No, I would say it's different.
Obviously.
Yeah. Well, like, no, the Bible is a lot different to me, particularly because it's translated. No, I don't have nearly the same kind of connection to those scripts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you a little down right now? What caused the downness?
Yeah. Well, it's just the last couple days. Like I think I burnt through my, and I think I just burnt through my energy reserves, and then wound up. And it's just been a little bit exhausted and needed to recover.
So that one day that we hung out at Kiko's and then you slept at Ridge's hostel bed.
Right. Well, that was, yeah, I mean, that was part of it for sure. Like I'm not accustomed to staying up until 5 or 6. But it's still in total, I think, a fun night. But I think also part of it was, bouncing from place to place. Like I stayed 2 days with Gareth. That was really nice of him to open up his house. And then, and then there was that like big day that happened and went to IHOP at 5 a.m.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. And I definitely did not expect all that. And then I stayed with Ridge. Then I hoofed it over here. And
wow.
So
you walked all the way here from Ridge's hostel?
No. Ridge gave me a ride, but by that I just mean like it was just another day of traveling, changing places. So just like 3 different places in 3 nights meant that I think I was just a little bit exhausted.
So it's just an energy thing. Physically, you're exhausted. There's no sort of emotional trauma that happened.
No emotional trauma that occurred. That's such a strong word. It's so overused these days. The word trauma is really snuck in, especially amongst millennials in our peer group. It's like, oh, everything's traumatizing now.
Yeah, some things are just events. They don't have to enact an emotional scar.
Yeah, I mean, even extremely negative events don't necessarily leave you traumatized. It all depends on how you're able to recover from it.
Yeah, and do you think people are more nurture or nature?
Oh boy, another light question. Honestly, well, I think that they are both much more profoundly than most people gives it credit for. I would say that I think that there are things encoded in our DNA which go beyond merely physical expression and have to do with memory and experiential matters.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, like when we were over at Kiko's and like I dangled a snake right next to Ridge, or like the plastic snake, and like he had that.
You kept doing that all night.
Well, no, I did that twice. Was one to you?
No, you did it to Kiko or to Noe.
Oh yeah, to Noe and to Ridge, I think. Yeah, and they both jump because it's a shape that's imprinted, and like you've probably seen
nature.
Like those videos of and I would say it's like, well, maybe what nature is what nurture becomes over generations of consistent experience.
So you think that it's the different side of the same coin?
Yeah, maybe it's different. Maybe it's different expressions of the same process.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between short and long-term memory or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if there's a real difference between nature and nurture. I think it's like how your nurturing enables you to enact your nature, and what part of your nature is able to survive in this environment.
That's a good point. It's like what did you come preloaded with, which is and isn't consistent with success in the given conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're doing better now that you have a constant place to stay?
Well, I mean, it's only been like a night or 2 that I've been back at the hostel, but yeah, I think I'll be recovering my strength.
This one seems a lot more professionally run than the last one.
Definitely.
That's a relief.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like each one had its advantages.
Yeah.
Like Drifter Jacks definitely had, definitely had like a a freer, like more social environment.
Yeah.
But this one, is more structured and I think conducive to longer term stability in life.
Yeah, and restfulness.
There's probably get more rest here than there. Yeah.
Did you go to City Limits yesterday?
I did not. Yeah, did you?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I only thought about it later, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're in a place where you can stay at long term. It's just interesting that there's so many comedians in the Austin, Texas scene that are staying in hostels, Ridge, others that I don't know if
Christina, Jose, and I'm not sure which other comedians are staying here at the Firehouse. Tyler Large was for a time.
Okay.
I don't know if he is anymore. Yeah, but Ridge and Christina, like what they have is, I mean, it used to be a hostel, but it's like a month-to-month renting, but it's like a communal living situation.
Is it cheaper than rent?
Well, it's like $600 a month for Ridge's shared room. So
that's sort of cheap.
Yeah,
but
so that's,
I think you can find something, especially since he has a car.
Mm-hmm.
But what's good about the hostel is that you can leave pretty easily.
Yeah.
And you can get it pretty easily.
Yeah.
It's like in between a hotel and whatever.
Exactly.
An apartment.
Yeah, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to stay here if I'm not on staff though, because there's there's an official 14-day per year limit to staying here, but I don't know if they will, I don't know if they'll keep that, like, I don't know if they'll enforce that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. A lot of people are moving here. This is the hot scene, and hostels are filling up.
Right.
People are wanting to try it out.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is now the only hostel in town now that Drifter Jack's closed. It's just the Firehouse, folks, if you come to Austin. Yeah.
So do you think that's an efficient use of city resources? Don't you think it'd be better if we had more of these kind of places to accommodate drifters?
Definitely. Yeah. Well, okay. No, hang on. So I wouldn't go so far as to, talking about efficient use of city resources, like that brings in a normative element to the conversation. And that's a question that's not easily answerable, like unless you have the whole budget laid out in front of you. However, I would say that yes, I think it'd be a good thing if Austin had more hostels. As a matter of fact, talking with the owner of the previous hostel, Drifter Jack's, which is now closed, he was talking about how just a few years ago there were like 7 or 8 hostels in Austin, but as a result of the way the economy is moving, it's a lot more like the hostel business model is no longer profitable enough to stay in business in most parts of the city. So as a consequence, there are fewer establishments available for traveling people.
Yeah, which I think hurts the city. I think if you have a city that has a port that you can port yourself into, then you get more transient people who can help the city and its culture and try it out.
Oh, okay, so you're thinking along the lines of what, like little, like extra pieces of flavor that mobile and like non-established people offer to a place. I think that's true. At the same time, I understand how the economic forces of industry moving to Austin in this way would cause things to move in the direction that they have, and I don't necessarily think that that's wrong.
Well, I don't know if it's a pristine experiment. I think we're living in a society that has wealth inequality.
Mm-hmm.
So there's less people who are transient who have the money to be able to afford hostels, and the only people who do have money are like Tesla and Elon Musk, and they get to sort of form the city however they want because they have all the resources, and their idea of the city is very not conducive to actual humanity and transient people that make the city and the culture.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. It might be a little bit... Okay, so I think on the level who has lots of money and has the opportunity to shape like civic arrangement. That's probably true, that like big companies and very wealthy people do have like that kind of do have a lot of influence as a result of the resources that they have. But I don't know if it's true that there like aren't enough people who are transient and have the resources to stay at a hostel. Like, no, I think that there are enough people who are traveling who would be able to stay at a hostel.
Well, then why are they shutting down?
I think that the hostels are shutting down because, so that was a miscommunication in our earlier time. Yeah, that they're shutting down because the property that they have could be more profitably employed in a different business, not because there aren't people who can and will stay at a hostel. The other hostel was totally full earlier. It's just that the alternatives that the owners of the property have of like who can set up shop in their property, have more have better options, like businesses that would pay more because they'd be bringing in more money.
But just chasing profits doesn't make a city better.
I agree. As a matter of fact, like if say like this hostel closed down next week, then that would be really sad to me. I agree. Profit itself doesn't make a city better. Yeah.
And I guess it's like supposed to, like, profit's supposed to mimic what's best for the community or the country or the city or the world. And just to have chasing profits, if we did that, everything would be a condominium or I don't know, a cupcake shop or whatever. And I don't think that's a good world to live in. And I think like what we think is profits is just the whims of the billionaire class, since they have all the money. And if we just make way for profits, we're just making the world however they want it, as opposed to how we all want it.
I think that you overestimate the influence of the extremely rich in terms of their ability to shape culture. Like for instance, the last hostel was right next to the UT campus. And so I had the opportunity to walk many times up and down where like different shops which are targeted at college students were. And those shops reminded me a lot of the shops, like for instance, your cupcake shops, your eyebrow threading, like
Boat supply company. Yeah,
like clothing store called Misbehaving. Then there's like a bank which is associated with the university. Like that all seemed, and then Chipotle. Those were exactly the kind of businesses that were right next door to my university. And so like that clued me into realizing that the culture, like that there's kind of like a monoculture in each of the different subsections of our society, because like everyone wants to feel like they're like, so Samantha who's going to UT and Trevor who's going to UCSB, like are friends and they keep in touch and they're separated by all this distance and they have a different experience because they're going to different universities, but actually their lives are similar enough that they can still communicate. That So like like for instance, like that kind of thing, I don't think is a result of the actions of the billionaire class. I think it's like more complicated and subtle ripples in society that govern that. But like for instance, like Austin becoming like a big center for tech, I don't think it's just the consequence of the decisions of billionaires. I think it's that like birds of a feather flock together, right? And in the same way that San Jose got totally, inundated with people going there for tech jobs, I think there's similar things happening in Austin. But and then when it comes to like, okay, so they're making a certain amount of money. So then what are like the rationally, like then just what are the kinds of services that you would need, for those people? Well, luxury housing, you need offices. And then you need, you need food availability, because they're going to be very busy, and because it's predominantly male, like you probably want strip clubs and things. No, seriously.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you think that it's more like who's moving here, and we all get a say in how we make this environment, and it's actually the people that want the same thing everywhere that's the problem.
Oh, I'm not talking about in terms of a problem. I'm saying that, well, it's not necessarily like the people who are demanding like these four things, but what I'm saying is like,
It's
if
the economy just naturally producing what the people want.
yeah, there's like, yeah, naturally and artificially, because like every person who employs like a piece of industry, whether that industry is this building that we're sitting in or money that they have, like makes decisions about it. But whatever of those decisions are profitable ones are decisions that survive. And then,
But what is profitable is only what the rich want, or what they have the ability to spend on, because no one else has the money.
well, I think we're stuck. Okay, you and I don't have too much money, but I think that we each have resources that we're constantly employing for like to in order to make our lives both as enjoyable, sustainable, and even profitable as we can. So, like, I might be going into a job soon, which, like where I'd be on the phone for maybe 4 hours a day, but it's like $60,000 a year or something, and like that to me is an excellent financial decision in order to support my other goals in life.
Yeah, but what you can spend that $60,000 on is all decided by people who own Gap and Walmart, and like the 4 people who own all the pharmaceutical companies or whatever.
True, or that money can be used to bring about, because I don't like particularly care too much for the things that I can consume. Like, yeah, but if a person doesn't have a consumer mindset, then they can employ that money to create something totally new and bring and usher something different into the world.
Well, if we could pool our resources together, we might be able to make a difference in the world, but unfortunately Americans don't really pool their resources together. They're in it for themselves, and we don't really have an ability to fight back against the billionaire class.
Yeah, I think that we might be a little bit less in it for ourselves than most of us are just distracted and tranquilized by the
Billionaire class?
Not necessarily by the billionaire class, but like by all of the consumption and
who drives that?
Entertainment. Well, it's not. Yeah. I think we're all agreeing to it on some level. Like the fact that so many people spend their evenings just watching Netflix and vegging out. It's like.
Yeah, we're all agreeing. I mean, you don't think that the billionaire class is as big of a deal as I think it is?
So how big of a deal do you think it is, and in what terms?
I mean, all the jobs that comedians in our friend group do is like ferry food around, walk dogs. Like, these are not very economically impactful jobs. We're just like picking up the scraps from the billionaires. They decide what jobs are useful and how much benefits we get, and which stores exist, and how our roads look, and how.
I wonder. So
transportation.
I wonder like how much influence the billionaire class has on you were talking about roads and public transportation and things like that. I mean, I think that's it's much more directly impacted by. I think it's much more directly impacted by the voter.
Well, haven't you seen what they did in Los Angeles? How GM and whatever killed the electric cars and street cars, and
I do know that story.
like the highways and all that. So, I mean, I think they do have an influence on the way our cities look, and they want us to all drive in cars because that's profitable, even though that's not better.
It's not the most sustainable, yeah.
So that's what I was referring to, but I guess like not the minute details, but I guess I don't like like having to be prey to the people with money, and if our society is designed around money, then the people with the money are going to have more power, and they're going to use that power to accrue more resources, and then they're going to dominate the market. And I think having just profit be your motive is dead end and monopoly inducing.
Sure, I'm hearing all that, and I think that some amount of that is true, and all of it could be true, but I think that the attitude that you're taking towards it, in some sense, feels like a dead end to me, and you can clarify for me whether I'm onto something here. Is that the attitude feels really victimizing to me, rather than focusing on, well, what is it that I have an opportunity to do? Well, yeah, maybe if the fundamental, like if the first thought is, what is it that I can do to do what I want to do with my life in order to bring about, rather than the first thought being, was like, well, these people have all the power.
Well, it's infuriating, and I know that it's like not emotionally healthy, but I don't think that's a healthy way to go, is just to feel the best emotions all the time.
Okay. But it's infuriating.
Yeah.
And right. And so, why is it infuriating?
Because of what our generation has been put through and how we're fucked, and our lives are ruined by this system. And I think that a lot of people want to be like, well, it's fine, everything's okay, but that's how it continues.
Right. It's infuriating because a whole generation of people have been offered poorer choices in the present than past generations have been as a result of the course that industry has taken. Now, what I'm curious to hear from you is like, okay, well, you said it's infuriating, and that so
solutions.
No. Actually, what I'm curious about is something is something a lot more personal, like how that makes you feel.
It makes me feel like we gotta burn it all down and start over in Sweden.
Okay. I mean, well, why not just move to Sweden then?
Because I'm not from there. I don't speak the language. Don't understand their culture. I'm a creature made for this country, and I feel like I'm best served taking down America. And it fills me with so much purpose and drive to be mad at the world.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think anger is an excellent motivating force when it has purpose behind it and a goal attached to it. Yeah, but there's another question I want to ask, because once we touched on the fact that you were infuriated, like a lot opened up for me, because I feel like we can have a conversation because it has to do with because it has to do with more than what you're thinking, but also what you're feeling.
But I don't know about like feelings. I just think that it's easier to just be like, oh, this guy's sort of gross. Whatever he says must be wrong, which I don't know. I think it's better to take people's logical statements and analyze them rather than their emotional. But
True. Well, I mean, or rather to say, I think they're both important.
Yeah. But I guess I'm not as good at emotionally keeping up emotional stamina or like emotional health or emotional awareness. But I mean, so what do you think that the future of America looks like?
I don't know. Like, it's very uncertain to me. And I don't know. Speculation's really risky. Oh yeah, here's one other place that I wanted to go to. This reminded me of it, because I don't think that I have a broad enough personal experience or a wide enough personal lens in order to accurately prognosticate what is going to go on in the future like in a macroscopic level for America. But something that I'm curious to know from you is like, okay, so you talk about the billionaire class a lot. Like, what kind of personal experience do you have with individuals who are members of that?
Zero.
Okay.
I don't have to personally know them to look at the numbers and look at our lives and be like, oh, they're taking it all.
Okay. And so you don't have any personal experience, but where you went with that is numbers. So what would you say the top, like the most impactful things that you've heard, felt, and experienced concerning that topic have been for you?
The job market, my friends having to work server jobs, and basically just like be their servants and wash their feet, metaphorically. Yeah. Just like what we have to do to survive and how much of our time we have to give up.
Well, when you talk about these things, it almost seems like there's a strong dichotomy in your mind between, and I might be wrong, correct me if I am, between people who are in like a service role and those who are served in society. Because like someone who I would serve at a restaurant, if I got a waiting job today, most of those people aren't even close to billionaires. Like they're pretty...
like getting paychecks from billionaires, and then they use it on the service industry.
And so like they serve some organization that they work for. In exchange, they have money which they sometimes employ in a capacity where others serve them, whether it's drinks or food or kayaks or whatever. And I have some arrangements in my life where I serve others, whether it's the dry cleaning company or whatever. And there are some situations where I'm served by other people, whether it's like someone might want to buy me a drink, like in a social setting, or others also, they serve me with their attention when I'm performing for them on stage. Yeah.
So, I mean, we can't have an economy based on serving each other. We actually have to make something, and where does all that wealth come from? And I think it comes from third world countries that we're exploiting. Because that's America's game. That's the only thing we know how to do.
Yeah, well, okay, but you were saying we can't, so there are two things there. We can't have an economy which is based on serving each other. I would argue we can. Maybe we need to approach serving each other differently. But I think like serving each other is actually a very noble thing.
I just think that if we're going to compete, we can't just be maintaining.
Okay.
Although that would be nice.
Yeah. And you're talking about exploiting third world countries. I would say much more generally that a lot of economic growth comes as a result of exploiting nature and like what we gather from nature, which is unfortunate because I was thinking about this a few years ago. I was like, okay, well, where does new wealth come from? And I'm like, okay, well, new wealth doesn't come from, a therapy session. Like basically what a therapist provides is some kind of help for a person who's in psychological distress. Okay, so like services like that don't generate new wealth. But as I was like ticking things off the list, I think mostly where our wealth comes from, like at the bottom level, is what we get from nature, and then that can be made into higher and higher value things as a result of technology, techniques, innovation, like crafting it and sculpting it into something. Yeah. But I do think that we do get most of our wealth from nature, and how we do that and how responsibly we do that is important. Yeah. Because we also because if we talk about having a society where everyone has the same opportunities, well, in order to live on the planet that we have with a certain number of people, only so much can be available to each person. Because like if for instance, like we wanted all of the same things to be available to people, well, if all of like the options, if all the options in terms of like places you can go, things you can do, like toys that you can play with, entertainment that you can have.
Mhm.
If that was available to everybody, well, that would simply not be sustainable, because there would be just like too much of a burden on the planet.
But if we can do this sustainably and go kayaking, which people in nature do, like hunter-gatherers, I'm
Right.
sure like we can have leisure activities for everyone.
Right, and so the question becomes like, okay, well maybe, yeah, and I think that people can actually like live very satisfying lives quite simply, and like you can be a part of a very small community and never travel too far from where you are and have a very rich and fulfilling life.
Hmm.
And so like one of the things becomes like, okay, well maybe not everyone in the world has to visit like all 192 countries before they die, or however many it is, like in order to be like fulfilled and affirmed. Maybe it's a lot like so maybe if we want everyone to have the same opportunities, maybe those opportunities don't extend very far out geographically, but
there doesn't have to be a limit on how much experiences we have. We can have all the experiences we want in a more sustainable way, that we don't have to ration it out.
right. Yeah, but I just mean in terms of transporting yourself to different parts of the planet, there are fuel costs associated with that.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's significant enough that we have to stop doing it. I think
Okay.
there's other things that we can do to limit pollution.
Mm-hmm.
But I love, the world that we live in, and I love people. I just think that we don't have the best ability to express humanity or love, and I think it's because like a few people at the top decided to take everything, and it's like a momentum thing. Like we got used to doing that in the feudal ages, and then we're like, let's keep doing that in America. And then we saw communism taking off in Russia, and we're like, oh shit, that's the next step. We can have more freedom to everyone else.
Oh, so you felt like communism was an answer to capitalism, which provided a better solution to various market problems than we had ever experienced before.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one of the reasons why you favor communism so much, is that to you it represents like this next possible step for humanity.
Yeah.
Okay.
And America didn't want to have that. Like, there's no reason for us to fuck with the Soviet Union as much as we did, except that we were afraid of losing our stronghold on the people.
Gotcha. So once it became once technology progressed to a point where a society could have a kind of controlling influence over the world, that our iterations in developing new ways of structuring society to make it better and more free stopped, because that society, namely America, which developed during a time when it could more or less take control of the world, decided that it should stop.
Yeah, I mean, it happened with France. When France had their revolution, all the countries in Europe were like, we can't have this, let's stop them. Like, the monarchs were like, we can't have the next step, or else our people will ask for that.
Sure, of course. Yeah, I think that there are innumerable examples all across the world in how, in how there's forward movement and resistance to forward movement simultaneously. I think there are also a lot of examples of, what was I going to say? I forget, it'll come back to me.
Okay. So, I mean, what do you think about comedy in Austin? It's pretty rocking right now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, there are opportunities to do things every night of the week, no matter who it is that you are. I love going to all the mics. I would like to be able to go to more, so I'll be...
Yeah, I love the community. It's very different. I think because of the pandemic, we're just thankful that we have the ability to do this. And we really enjoy it, and we really enjoy talking to each other, because for the longest time we couldn't.
Yeah, that's something I can't really speak to, since prior to the pandemic, I never really did comedy, and wasn't a part of a community of open mic comedians. However, I would say that I really do love our community of open micers to and that and that everyone is very supportive of each other.
Yeah, when you go in, or when I go in to the creek, it's like all friends,
Right.
saying hi to everyone. And it's great because you're not like there just to make friends. You're there to do comedy, and you can make friends naturally.
Right.
Which I think is great because we're coming together and fighting the billionaire class.
It all comes back to that for you.
I like building solidarity. I think it's good that we talk to each other, and I think if we all like were interconnected, it would be a better world. And I like seeing you just being a golden retriever, going up to everyone, wagging your tail.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a great time. Enjoying our community too, and that we have the opportunity to make friends with a lot of people. And I've been thinking about that recently, and like in who it is that you're more naturally attracted to and connected to, and that like, because at the moment, like I have a lot more opportunities to be friends with and spend time with people than I can reasonably take up. And I feel like a consequence of that is that the people who are in our community will have the opportunity like to be drawn towards the ones that they're most interested in being friends with, and like that can make for some like very fertile friendships.
Yeah, we have so many options. You can pick the best one for you.
Yeah, well, yeah, whatever that happens to be, or you can learn like, or you can learn like what's better between multiple options, or.
Yeah, but then I find a difference between whose comedy I like and who I can be friends with.
Okay.
And when those align, it's great. But usually like someone that I find really funny, it's awkward because I'm like too respectful. I'm like, oh wow, you're so awesome.
Oh, interesting.
Or like someone that I get along with but isn't funny, I'm like subtly treating them like shit.
Oh yeah, because you care, like, because it matters to you whether they're doing well.
Yeah, because when you're on stage and you're bombing, it's basically the whole audience gets used to hating you, and you let them practice hating you.
Oh, interesting.
Like, shut the fuck up. Just having that thought in your head, and then when you're off stage, you still have that.
Whoa, yeah, right. Well, something that I've seen like a number of people do, which makes me sad. I saw someone say something, which I think I'm going to drop a word in his ear next time I see him. But something I've seen a number of people do is like go up, and they either will run out of things that they had prepared to say and then just like kind of stay there on the stage, like, and then or they just won't have any plan whatsoever, and it's not going well, and they stay to the very last second of their time. And like, and I've heard a few of those people say, like, oh yeah, I'm just here for stage time. It's like, well, you standing on a stage is not going to make you better.
You're practicing bombing. You should practice killing.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, is like, yeah, right. The habits that you make are the habits that you'll perpetuate. And So it's like this mentality of some comedians that are just like, I'm just going to do as much as possible without any thought of making it good, right.
Which is the worst, because not only are they not getting better, but they're also wasting everyone's time.
Right. And I think that's something that I actually make an error on the side of, is keeping it in my mind that I have to like go to as many things as possible, and and show up and be there, but then sometimes I'll be so frantic and busy in that, like, over a course of a few days, like, oh, I didn't write any new jokes to share.
Yeah.
And so then I'll need to write some new jokes, and then so finding a balance between those things is important. Yeah.
I think the open mics in Austin are pretty crazy. There's a good energy to it because it's like matters. It's like Joe Rogan might be watching in the back. So there's like an importance to it, and there's a weight to it that I think is really cool.
Interesting. I didn't think about it in those terms, like, because I wouldn't have imagined that like someone like Joe Rogan would be showing up to a mic, but Yeah, I mean, of course, you have pre-pandemic comedy experience, whereas I, basically, other than like two open mics prior to these, only have post-pandemic mic experience.
Yeah. So what made you start the comedy?
I just wanted to do it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And in my family, I was always kind of like the comic relief and the entertainment, like would provide kind of diffusing, like a diffusing moment for, or like I would provide the diffusion for a moment of tension or something in the house. And I was always trying to make people laugh, like for as long as I can remember. Like I'll say something, like, and I'll watch and see if like someone laughs. So it's just like a lot of practice in that area. But I've always liked to be in front of people. Always liked to be an entertainer.
Did you move here for comedy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So was there something about the pandemic, like near-death experience, or like, oh, this is all finite, let me pursue my dreams?
No. Originally, my idea. So I came back to America in late October 2020.
From Spain?
Yeah, from Spain. And I had been, and I'd been all over Europe during that previous year. And when I was taking that trip, it was that I had decided that what I really wanted to do was stand-up comedy, and I was going to return to America in New York City, and start doing the open mic circuit there, because that was where I figured was the best place. But then, of course, in the throes of the pandemic, New York City wasn't the best place. And, and I'd been listening to the Joe Rogan Experience, and it sounded like Austin was a good spot.
Yeah.
And so just kind of like in a leap of faith, I came out here on March 30th, and things just took off from there.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Joe Rogan helped me move here too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's crazy how that one man has so much power, and it's like, I wish there were more Joe Rogans, but unfortunately, we've only managed to create one in our mad capitalist dash for survival.
Yeah, but it's also interesting because, how long ago did you move here?
Maybe March or February.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so you were just here a little bit earlier before I was, and before that you were in New York?
Yeah, and after Seattle, and then LA, and
okay.
then...
Were any of the places during the pandemic that you were like open or free enough to do comedy that you...
LA was.
Okay, LA was.
Yeah.
That's good.
They had a lot of outdoor mics.
Mm.
Seattle only had 1 or 2 mics a week, which was very not enough.
Yeah, of course.
And it's about the same size as here. So it's way more open here, and everyone's come here. There's a lot more comedians per capita here, because everyone's new here.
Yeah, I mean, the Creek and the Cave has been an enormous influence on me, and of course it's amazing. It's an amazing hub for people to hang out, and and they've already attracted many top comedians there since they opened on April 1st.
Yeah, Todd Glass, everyone.
Yeah,
Bonnie
McFarlane, Joe Rogan, Tony Hinchcliffe, and so if you come to Austin, come to the Creek and the Cave, everybody.
Yeah, it's a great club.
Have you met Rebecca?
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to go to the Creek in New York.
Right, you talked about their location.
Yeah, I slept right next to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I did 3 mics a day there.
Okay. Oh, so they would do 3 mics every day?
Yeah, in the basement, and it's 2.5 minutes bucket. It's like 40 comedians. It's crazy.
Holy cow!
Some of the best comedy in the world.
Awesome.
I mean,
even at the mics.
In terms of open mics.
I mean, okay.
I mean, best open mic comedy
okay.
in the world, I think, happened there in that basement.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, and I lived there just doing mics every day.
Rebecca was talking about doing even more. Doing even more mics at the Creek, and I was like, that'd be amazing. But even with the 10 that they do every week, I was thinking that's banging. That's a lot.
Yeah, especially for this scene.
Yeah, but isn't that interesting how in a way okay, so the Creek and the Cave kind of becomes okay. One thing that's been going on in my mind recently is realizing how similar this moment in my life is to a time that I became like extremely involved in a particular church and like Christianity in general, and how like and how I was sort of becoming involved in like what was a cult at that point, and realizing like how this moment in my life is similar to that, and like my involvement with comedy is similar to that.
Yeah, it brings you closer to people, and I think the open mic community is sort of a rare thing. It's like a cult where everyone can leave anytime they want, where we all chose to be here. We're all chasing something else. No one is the god. I think it's the way a cult is supposed to be.
Interesting. Yeah, you're putting a spin on that I wasn't expecting. Yeah, because people can... because the harmful thing about cults is when, like, someone gets thrown out, or, like, you know, or if when someone leaves, then they're suddenly excluded.
Yeah.
And I think, like... Well, but you also mentioned Joe Rogan earlier, and I do kind of feel like there is a certain subculture surrounding him which is cult-like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And might not be the best, but he handles it really well in that he rejects it. He doesn't lean into it too much. He just does his podcasts and tries not to start a cult.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because like he definitely could if he wanted to. Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, but this is the best part of being in a cult, is the human
feeling.
cult, or the village type thing,
Like
or
the
community.
inclusiveness. Yeah.
And I think that is one of the best parts of comedy, is that it forces you to socialize. It's a very social art form. So you can't just do it in your bedroom like painting
True.
or guitar.
Something that I've been wondering lately about comedy is because like now that I'm like neck deep in comedy and like comedy communities, like I feel that like, and I'm beginning to become aware of like the social circle that exists within comedy from the top down. Like I'm just beginning to see the bigger picture. But one thing I wonder is whether what is funny in the world is partially determined as a result of like this network of stand-up comedians and like what they're...
Yeah, we're like a part of a village. We have the cobbler making shoes, and he makes shoes for the whole village, and we make humor for the whole village, aka the world.
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it. That as the world has expanded and globalization has taken place, and people are more specialized in what they do, in a sense, you have grand groups of people taking the roles that a single person might take in a smaller community.
Yeah, and
and that the comedians, like, they have this kind of hive mind, like, in a sense.
And we go out in all intellectual directions, and we're like, what is funny here? And then, oh, look, this direction. And then, oh, Derek is going off in that direction, and there's humor there. So it's like we're pushing the limits professionally. Like, this is our full-time job, and I think we're finding humor in things that maybe no one has discovered yet.
True, yeah, because I have heard an astonishing number of jokes since I've gotten to Austin.
Yeah.
Some percentage of which make me laugh, other percentage of which I appreciate the humor in it and understand how it can, how it can be funny. And those ones I usually clap for, and then other ones which it's yeah.
Yeah. That you don't pity laugh for.
That don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like interesting what people choose to talk about too. Like what people are interested in, like IUDs everyone loves talking about that because it's like, oh, I can have sex with you and come inside you, and no, it blocks the semen, and that whatever. Like, it's just interesting. It's like connecting to humanity. You get to peer inside the tribe, the hive mind, the species.
You get to peer down the speculum of the species. But I do like that bit that Jesse has, and he has like exactly the kind of energy and goofiness.
Burlingame?
Yeah. Oh, wait.
What's his bit?
Well, because he has a thing about IUDs. He said like that the worst job in the world has got to be an IUD, because like if you screw it up once, you're done. Like you're out of work. And then also like you have, like you have like this dick coming up to fuck with you, and he keeps poking you on the head, like you there you are. He's like, like you're not gonna get through. He's like, I'm definitely gonna get through.
Yeah.
He's like, you better not come on me, man. He just sprays me.
Personifying IUDs.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, don't do it, don't. Oh man.
But what if they love it? What if that's what they live for?
Right, it could be. But I don't think that IUDs. But it has like antagonistic chemicals to sperm. It has like spermicide or copper or whatever it is that kills the sperm. So like I think there's got to be an antagonistic relationship between the personified IUD and the personified dick. Or maybe you could like personify him as like William Wallace. Just like cutting down the swath of Englishmen in front of him. It's like, enough of your prima nocta bullshit. Get out of my wife.
Yeah, that's the worst policy. Surprised they named it. They're like, let's make this official.
Oh yeah. Oh, that
doesn't
the
make
policy
the colonized population very friendly to you.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe keep that on the DL.
Right. Just get your rocks off on your own time. But
yeah, I heard that's like not as prevalent as we think it is.
Okay.
The prima nocta, it was like more for the movie.
Yeah, I imagine that's true.
But it only has to happen once, and everyone's going to talk about it, because that would really suck.
Right, that would really suck.
And we're all like humans. Like, we're all at the mercy of the things larger than ourselves, and we're pretty much helpless if we're colonized to fight against it.
And I think a lot of these things that we talk about in terms of like, in terms of colonized or like the billionaire class, like I think a lot of those forces are a lot more are very impersonal, in that for instance, if it was the Irish who were in a position of strategic advantage over the English, like it would have been the Irish who were oppressing of the English, probably, unless their culture was such that they, that they wouldn't do that for some reason.
Well, just because you happen to have power over other people doesn't mean it's going to be impersonal. You could still make it personal, especially if you have some artistic flair about you and how you colonize.
Oh, okay. So you feel like that colonization has artistry to it.
Yeah, I mean, everyone likes to think they're artists. Why not colonizers? They probably enjoyed it to some extent, or else they wouldn't have done it.
Huh. Well, yeah, I mean, okay, well, I guess, like, well, did you enjoy the benefits? I can see enjoying the benefits of colonizing because of, like, well, yeah, because of the wealth it can bring you. It gives you more options of what you can do
and
in life.
Power over other creatures / humans.
Yeah.
And people enjoy that. Mm-hmm. So they could get into that, like 10,000 hours of mastery over fucking other people and torturing them.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, I mean, I wonder, like, okay, I wonder how many people, like, I wonder how enjoyable having power over others really is.
Well, people jerk off to it, like stockbrokers, finance bros. Mm-hmm. They got off on like, oh, I paid this guy $100 so that I could use his van, and then I jumped it off a cliff, and it was his family van, but I gave him $1,000 or $10,000. So
this is
to trash his shit.
Oh, but that's a real story that you're telling?
Yeah, some dude told me about it in New York. He was bragging about how morally compromised he was. Oh. But yeah, I mean, these people find joy in the power they have, because what else are they gonna do?
Interesting. What do you think causes that kind of behavior or attitude?
A society that is geared around that type of mentality.
How would you say like our society is geared around that type of mentality?
We have a selfishness, greed, power is respected. If you have money, then you get to fuck the hottest bitches, and then it's like, oh, I have all this power, let me use it, and that is what's rewarded in our society.
Interesting.
You don't feel that in the people you interact with, a little evil?
Not much. Like, okay, well, I would say that the most that I feel that, and I don't feel it often, is like is if I'm hanging out with a mixed group, and like, and there are some men in the group who like try to put me down in a slighting way in front of women that they might be interested in.
Yeah, that's really pernicious.
Yeah, I mean that happens. I mean that happens a lot. But at the same time, but there are lots of people that I don't feel put down in that way with, like with you and Riley, and others. Like so that's part of how I make my choices concerning who I want to spend the most time with.
Who you want to be your wingman?
Yeah, because I don't want someone. Like, I don't want someone in my close social circle who doesn't want me to be successful or would despise some kind of success in my life, because if they're successful, I want to cheer them on.
Yeah, I mean, women are very tricky in that way. They bring up a lot of emotions in people.
Yeah, very primal. And that, like, yeah, I mean, for instance, like, I don't really understand, like, I don't understand logically the desire to mate. Like, I understand why I understand an explanation for why it could exist, but, like, why it would exist is, like, that's just, like, it's what we do, it's how we propagate. But it goes way deeper and further.
Yeah, it's cultural, a lot of it, like bonobos.
Well, but I think that our culture is okay. Yeah, so you bring up bonobos, but I think the way in which our culture manifests itself is partly a result of our biology. And have you learned about like how mammals, like a mammal's testicle size and its mating practices are related?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're right in the middle between chimps and bonobos.
Or right in the middle between chimps and gorillas. Chimps and bonobos are very similar. But bonobos have like a peacemaking sexual practice, whereas chimps are a lot more violent.
So that depends on how promiscuous the females are, and chimps are fucking everyone, and gorillas are not fucking anyone but the male.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the dominant male is basically the only one who.
But have you read about Sex at Dawn?
I have not read that book.
And how, like, in ancient hunter-gatherer societies, they would fuck everyone as a way to bridge the gap and maintain unity in the group, and how, like, fighter pilots in World War II would have wife swapping so that if one of them died, they knew that their wife would be taken care of. And
I did not know that.
Like, monogamy arose out of agriculture, which is 10,000 years old, and humans are 200,000. And that's because we needed to pass on our possessions, since we have possessions now. But back in the day, we didn't have possessions.
Right, once you start writing down contracts. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to let that sink in.
But I don't know what you're saying about, what was it, like people putting you down in like mixed group setting, and like how our culture is naturally, our sexual practices as a culture is naturally whatever. Yeah,
because I think our sexual practice as a culture is defined by our society and its history, but also by our biology, and like those things come in tandem.
Yeah, I just think that our society is very wrong about sex. And
I'd be willing to agree with that. And well, like what specifically yeah, what's okay? So you've told me some about this before. What specifically bothers you about our approach to sex?
How it has to be like this soul bonding experience, or like how it has to mean now you have to take care of the woman, or the woman now has to be reliant on you, and how women use sex for survival because they're cut off from any economic opportunities.
To like to hook someone in, you mean?
Yeah. And it's like this now fraught thing that's used for survival instead of to denote love.
Oh, instead of like recognizing like a mutual bond of attraction between people, and they can choose to enjoy a sexual experience together as a result of that, rather than having it be tied to all of this, history of agricultural enterprise.
Yeah, it's not it's now a financial thing, and like a responsibility. Now you're tied together. Now you have to fight for her honor or whatever, which is a nice thing to do, I guess.
Yeah. So what personal experiences have you had that, that
Not
inform
getting
these
laid.
opinions? Okay. Well, surely not ever, but
Yeah,
not
just
getting
not
laid
as much.
often. Yeah.
Not enough love in my life.
Yeah. What other? Okay. So you said not getting laid, and that's frustrating, of course. Yeah. You have to acknowledge that, that the lifestyle that you've chosen, living in a van, is that's not going to put you at the top of
Angie's List.
Yeah, or whatever.
Well, I think that's a problem, that a man has to be able to economically pay for your dentist or whatever. I think that's kind of a weird thing, but I mean, what does a girl want? She wants to be able to survive an apocalypse. You probably have a better chance with me.
That's probably true. So you just have to wait for the apocalypse, man, and
But that's the whole thing that I hate,
choice.
is that it's like an economic thing. Like, you have to be economically part of the game. If you're not part of it, then you don't deserve sex, which I think is dumb way to do it. But I mean, I got into it because I wasn't getting laid.
Okay. Oh, you got into the van life because you weren't getting laid.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not just me. I mean, there are many personal issues that I could fix, but it's a lot of men, a lot of women not fucking.
Yeah.
People that are single, that are desperate, not getting laid, and people in bad relationships. Because we have this monogamous model, and it creates a lot of tension and stress in relationships that cause there to be less sex. And financially, we're just not sexy as men in our generation because we don't have the ability to provide, because we have less wealth than the boomers did at our age.
Yeah.
And more wealth inequality.
Yeah, I was recently listening to an episode of The Portal with Eric Weinstein, and he was discussing sort of the position that our generation finds itself in, particularly with respect to life after education. Right, and he was saying, and I think he was saying that one of the reasons for the kind of relative stagnation or stoppage in economic growth in recent times in America is a result of certain industries not expanding as fast as they used to. And so I do think that I do think that there are there are definitely fewer opportunities. Like when I hear my grandpa talking about what it was like to be a young man in America for him and for his, father and grandfather, it feels like a lot more open and hopeful place. But I think that maybe some of this drought of opportunity isn't as much squarely on the shoulders of the billionaire class that we've been talking about as maybe you make it out to seem.
Then who's to blame?
Well, okay, that's a good question. One partial counter to it is maybe there isn't anyone necessarily to blame.
So it's the structure,
but there
the
are
system.
Things to figure out. Oh yeah, I mean, or maybe the way things that things are arranged. Like for instance, we're talking about wealth inequality across history, and have you heard about that? Have you heard about that Poisson distribution being like that so many things in nature are distributed like this Poisson distribution where like
80-20.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're like I guess it's like 20% of the people or things wind up with 80% of the benefit, like or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good thing. I think we should try not to have that type of distribution.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so it's probably good for us not to have that kind of distribution in all things. However, examining how that distribution manifests itself in nature without human interference and then like in human systems, I think can give us insight into understanding what's going on and not necessarily.
It just seems like a way to be okay with inequality. Like this is a very unnatural inequality that.
Well, okay, well if we think about deer, like there's one buck who's going to have multiple does, like that they're like the male part of any biological system is naturally a higher variance and lower success rate part of that system.
What about bonobos?
I don't know like how many bonobos the average male bonobo sires. That would be very interesting to find out.
But I bet they're getting laid a lot more than bucks.
That's probably true. Yeah. And so it's important to acknowledge that there are many different possible arrangements. However, I think there is always inequality.
Yeah, I'm not asking to fuck as much as Brad Pitt, but I just think that this level of inequality is very fixable and unfair.
Okay, and now how do you propose it would be fixed?
Economic redistribution and a breaking with the old ways of thinking about sex and getting rid of conservative Christians, just throwing them in a pit.
Well, sure, yeah, I think both. I only get this from the contextual things that you've mentioned in our conversation. I think maybe on stage, but I think just our conversation. That it sounds like your early years were heavily influenced by Christianity, like conservative Christianity.
I guess so.
Yeah, mine too. And so I can definitely appreciate what you're saying there. But in terms of, so how do you think that, like, yeah, what kind of economic redistribution are you in favor of?
I think all the money that goes to the CEOs, less of it should go to them and more of it should go to the workers. Unions, maybe half of the company is owned by the workers that work for the company.
Okay.
And less investors that are speculating on which company's going to survive and shorting stocks and all that bullshit, just like rearranging money to favor
themselves.
Yeah, and transferring wealth from the lower class to the upper class. And I think just like a fair tax structure.
What would be a fair tax structure?
Like enforcing the laws that currently exist and making sure they're not all getting sent to offshore bank accounts. Making sure everyone's paying their fair share in companies, because like Amazon didn't pay any taxes in 2019 or something like that. And just like, just at least following the rules that we have. And then if we need to fix the rules, like we had a 90% corporate tax rate in the 50s back when America was great again or whatever. And it didn't mean that we stole 90% of all the profits. It means the companies were incentivized to invest in the workers and in public spaces and not just give all that money to their investors. Yeah.
That's a good point.
But, it's communism, so we can't do it.
Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, no, I appreciate... yeah, but I figure that we as a country could change things.
Yeah, I think if we all are on the same page, it's just like, I think the biggest stumbling block is the apathy and being like, whatever, just don't think about it, just do the best for yourself. It's a waste of time. Don't worry about things larger. Think only about yourself. I feel like there's a lot of that, which is not helpful.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, no, I agree. It's like if people feel a particular way about something, they should take like thoughtful and informed action about it. Well, at the same time, like, yeah, but at the same time, like I'm sometimes cautious in taking action because I want to make sure, like, because I don't want to get swept up in something which is like, which in the end would be not right to do, but which I'm fully convinced is the right thing. Like, you know,
cautious.
Yeah, because I have experience of being strongly persuaded of something. In this case, I'm referring to like Christian ideals that I used to hold on to, and acting in accordance to them, with them, and like even like doing so with a lot of energy and consistency, and then realizing that these are things that I don't necessarily think are good or doing good for people, and then having to let go of that. So
luckily now things are so dire that can't get much worse.
Oh, they could still get a lot worse.
Well, we're headed there currently, so
true.
Anything that fixes it or makes it faster will only help us in the long run.
Well, that makes it fall apart faster?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah.
Like
finish up with America, let some other country take a crack at it.
Okay, but then what kind of what kind of apocalypse do you?
Well, I think things are so bad right now that we need to experiment with something else, and I think that just letting this go on is worse than trying something new and failing.
Okay. Yeah, I think that we should be trying new things constantly. But like, what are the indicators to you that things are at a point like that are really close to the breaking point?
Well, there's like the numbers, but then there's like the cultural, like we're not getting along. People are falling apart from reason. They don't even know what's true anymore.
That's a topic which is of a lot of interest to me, the polarization that we have been hearing increasingly about in the media over previous years. I think like the first time that I was exposed to the idea of how highly polarized modern American society was in watching that TV show, The Newsroom. In that initial monologue that Jeff Daniels' character makes, talking about how America at that time, which I think was around 2010 or so, was more divided than it had been since the Civil War, which was a crazy thing to think about. And the fact that it's only become more divided in the last 10 years, like that does worry me too. However, but you hear a lot of people talking about polarization. You hear a lot about, and then like the standard kind of follow up in that conversation is like, yeah, no, we just need to get along. We need to understand each other, but we still haven't learned how to listen to each other. So I think like a major, like, so I think people have the right thing in their hearts, and they're saying the right things with the right intention. But then what's really necessary is for us to learn, like, to listen to each other, and to like delay the flare up of emotion, to see each other first as people and second as whatever else.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's just hard because like the other side is so irrational, in my opinion. They're not even arguing from science or facts. They're just want to continue doing the primal barbaric experiment they've done for the past 400 years, and there's no reason besides they want to maintain power.
Okay, so this part of it, we're talking about a dichotomy between your way of thinking and what we might like ascribe to be the billionaire class's way of thinking, right?
Yeah, conservatives.
Oh, okay. So all right. Well, I would say that a lot of the people who are most invested in conservatism aren't really financially benefited by it.
Mm-hmm.
But in that last part of the conversation, we've entangled so many things that I kind of want to take a moment to disentangle them, if we can.
Okay.
Because initially when you were talking about polarization, I thought you were going to be talking about polarization between the left and the right, and in a sense you are, but you're talking about like the fact that you would be defined as a liberal based on where you fall broadly, and your disagreement. Okay, so what I would say is that people who disagree with you, if you want to figure out how to get along with them, the first thing to focus on is not the disagreement. It doesn't matter why they disagree with you. What matters, because I think that most people's basic level, I think that most people act based upon feeling much more than upon thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I would even go so far as to say that I think that's universally true, that people's beliefs are informed by their feelings rather than their feelings being informed by their beliefs. I think beliefs are largely a rationalization for other things.
So don't you think most people think that their beliefs dictate their feelings, even though their feelings are dictating their beliefs? They have this idea that it's the other way around,
right,
which
course.
makes them even more irrational.
Yeah. But do you feel that your feelings dictate your beliefs, so that your beliefs dictate your feelings?
I feel like my beliefs dictate my feelings, but I might be wrong.
I think that your feelings dictate your beliefs.
That's the
right. I mean, that is my
nagging question, but
right. And so,
I don't know if that's true. But
what
about you? What do you think?
What I think, well, just before I get to that, I think like one little polyp of evidence that lives in the conversation that we've had so far is you're talking about you're talking about not getting laid very often, and that's and that's a frustrating state to be in, and so a belief could easily spring out of that, as
and it should. There's no reason not to be angry and be like, something's wrong with this world because I feel bad. Feelings aren't necessarily irrational.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's interesting, because it used to be my position that that something's wrong with this world. Something's wrong with this world, and as a consequence, that something's wrong with this world because I feel bad. And then my attitude shifted to be like, if I feel bad in this world, how can I figure out how to get along in this world without feeling as bad as I was before?
Well, I can make myself feel better, but then the world is fucked anyways. It doesn't change the world, and I don't want to just save myself. I want the whole world to be better, and I don't want to just disassociate from the world just so I can maintain my mental health. I don't really care about my emotional health enough to sacrifice my logic to maintain it.
Well, I'm not talking about disassociating. I don't think that's good for mental and emotional health. As a matter of fact, I think deeper levels of engagement are good for mental and emotional health. But I also see the pain in what you're saying. I recognize it, and I don't think I really know what to say as a reply to that. But what was your question? You were going to ask me a question.
Do you think that your beliefs are feeling based, or if your feelings are thought based?
I think that my beliefs arise as a result of my feelings. And I'll give you, let's see if I can come up with an example for that in my present context, because there aren't too many things which I identify presently as being strong beliefs that I hold.
Mm-hmm.
In large part because of the situation that I mentioned, where I suddenly realized that I had all these beliefs, which which were delusional. But I'd say, okay. Well, I'm trying to think of what my main feelings what the main feelings I'm experiencing in life are. I did think of one example. And that example was that, for instance, I've been separated from my girlfriend, geographically, for a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
It's been, it's coming to the end of May. We last saw each other at the end of October. It's 7 months, and we're not going to see each other for another 2 months.
Two more months.
Yeah. And so 9 months being apart is quite difficult, and being faithful to a relationship like that. So for me, I just didn't want to mention this because it's also on the subject of sex, but being faithful to a relationship that you're 9 months separated from is very difficult. And so I brought up a number of times the possibility is do you think that that we should be allowed to to enjoy the company of other people while while we're apart for so long, and and that is and that I feel was a belief which was which was informed by my feeling of of feelings of frustration.
Mm-hmm. So you're very emotional. I think you feel very strongly, and I don't think there's anything wrong with feeling. It's the subconscious brain is pretty smart.
Mm-hmm.
And just because it's a feeling doesn't mean necessarily that it's wrong. But then if you make that feeling oh, I hate Mexicans, when you're actually just economically impoverished, and you want a better life for yourself and your family, and you feel that you're responsible for where that feeling leads you to think.
Yeah, and I think it's very, very important to to focus on, for each person to focus on what it is that they can do to make their and the world's condition better through their action. Rather than formulating irrational beliefs.
But don't you think it's rational to want workers to have more of their pay?
Yeah, sure. No, I think that any hesitance that you find is a result of I don't like to answer to questions that I don't have evidence for, but I think I think that people who trade a significant portion of their lives, their time and their energy to a job for an organization should be fully supported by that organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe some of my feelings are extreme. I don't know. I think religion is a way that the state and the powers that be kind of infiltrate our mind and put a back door into it and fuck around and mess it up. And now we don't have faith in our convictions or something like that.
I don't think that's all that religion does, but I do agree with you that religion has played that role many times in many places. But then also, I actually have kind of my opinion on this topic changed somewhat while I was abroad. And I went to go see a Friday night service in Westminster Cathedral, and that opened my eyes to the way that the Church of England works, which, because it is part of the state, that the church and the state meet in the crown, the Queen.
Yeah.
I think that's a better arrangement for religion in a country than the completely separate one that we have in the United States. Because when I listened to the sermon, it became clear to me that because the church and the state are bound together in England, that political matters must must affect the church, as well as like scientific discovery, that the church suddenly has to be fully acknowledging and present to secular discovery, scientific discovery, and then also political realities. As a result, the church has to actually be grounded more in reality than churches in America, which can divert and as you say, disassociate, as far
fiction
from reality as they want to. Yeah. And you could wind up believing, as I did at a time, things which are so unbelievably far-fetched that to spell them out on paper and ink, you would not recognize them as Earth as we know it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's like it grounds the church in reality and makes it more
pragmatic,
accountable.
Yeah,
that's good. I think it's disturbing to have that much of politics and the official governing body be the subconscious thing that's like basically your instincts, or I don't know what the church is like. I don't know. It's like irrational. So, but I mean, a lot of humanity is irrational. I just don't know if that type of thinking is ready for the 21st century, but
I mean the church
up till now it was useful.
Okay, the church may be irrational, but I think a lot of those ancient stories, the reason why they're so ancient and they get retold over and over is that they strike on some human universals. But earlier you were saying about I forgot again. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good way. I think it's better than trying to be rational all the time. I think if you try to be rational all the time, then you go crazy. But if you're like, oh, some things are just irrational and we believe it because we do, then it takes out a lot of work, which I think was very important back in the day. But I think now with our supercomputers and all the people we have, I don't know if it's as necessary. But I mean, I think that we could do with a little more spirituality in our world.
Right. Isn't that funny how superstition makes you crazy if you totally invest in that. Rationality, it does the same. It seems like you need some kind of blending of the two. Like you need a spiritual.
We're not computers.
Yeah, like you need a spiritual. I mean, I wonder if maybe that's related to the fusion of quantum and Newtonian physics. It's because quantum physics definitely has a more spiritual quality to it being so baffling. Yeah. And Newtonian physics is one of the main fruits of rationality.
Yeah. So you want to call it a day?
Sure. Yeah, we can wrap up here.
All right. Thank you so much for doing it.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me, Hans.
No problem. A lot of fun. Yeah. We discovered and we solved things, I feel like.
Yeah, well, definitely we got to know each other better, which I think is the biggest payout for me. So one thing I like talking to you when we get on these subjects is you're very in earnest, and honest conversation is I think one of the best ways to get to know what a person is about, because there's a lot of fakery out in the world and you're not it.
Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, thank you, Hans.
Enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, thank you, listeners. Bye.